Hi, my name is Phyllis and welcome back to the Chimoney Payment API series. In this second tutorial, I'll dive into the Chimoney API's account endpoints. I'll cover each endpoint in detail with examples and code samples. Before we begin, make sure you have the following prerequisites: a Chimoney developer account, your API key from the Chimoney portal, Node.js installed on your machine, and the Axos library installed in your project. If you haven't set up your Chimoney developer account yet, refer to our previous tutorial linked in the description box. The Chimoney API's account endpoints allow for the management of user accounts and transactions. These endpoints are also essential for retrieving transaction details, transferring funds between accounts, and verifying transaction statuses. They also facilitate the retrieval of public profile of a Chimoney user, and in all this, the use cases of these endpoints vary but they majorly revolve around customer support and detailed data analysis. For the first step, we are going to test out the Get Transaction Details by Issue ID endpoint. This issue ID allows the retrieval of transaction details, specific details of a transaction by its issue ID. To get started, we'll need to have an issue ID, and to retrieve an issue ID, we'll need to perform a transaction. So to perform a transaction, we'll go to the Payouts endpoints and then click on Payout Chimoney. After clicking that, you'll need to add the payload data that is required here, and we'll use the test values provided, that is test@gmail.com, and the value in USD, which is $10. And before you go ahead with initiating the API call, you'll ensure that the API key is inserted in the header and that the base URL is set to sandbox. After you've confirmed everything is okay, you'll click try it and it will initiate the payout. And we have our issue ID, so you copy the issue ID for that specific payout, and here it is. And now you copy that issue ID into this box. Once you have that, you can go back to try it, and it will generate the specific details of the transaction that we just made. So as you can see, the details are the same. You can see the value that we sent, the issue ID, the personalized message, although we didn't input one, the fee charged, type, issuer. So that concludes it for testing out the Get Transaction Details by Issue ID endpoint. The next endpoint that we want to try out is the Get Public Profile of a Chimoney user. The public profile of a Chimoney user looks like this. It basically contains all the social links that a Chimoney user chooses to make available through their public profile link, and also the payment links. For example, here we have the Interledger wallet address, which is one of the services Chimoney offers, so you can connect your Interledger wallet address through Chimoney and you can get paid directly through Chimoney. So we'll go back and perform an example of retrieving a public profile user details. In order to perform this, you need to have a user ID. You need to have if you don't have a user ID, you can use your public profile ID or your link code ID. And so we have been provided with an example value, which is the public profile that we just viewed. So we're going to use this, and if the public profile is under a specific sub account, then you can specify that here. And then we're going to click try it. So it says key not valid, and we have to verify that the URL is a sandbox one, which it wasn't a sandbox one. So we'll click try it again. And awesome, as you can see, the details of the Chimoney user has been retrieved and displayed here. This is essential for products or companies, or if you're building a solution where you want your users to be able to show their public profile or link their public profile and allow others to retrieve it. You can integrate with this specific endpoint. The next endpoint we're going to look at is the get all transactions by account. Basically, if you have an account on Chimoney, you'll perform transactions under that specific account. You can also create a sub account under the account that you have. So you will have a primary account and a secondary account. So what this will do is retrieve all the transactions that has been done by a specific account. For this, you can also include the sub account ID. So for this example, we are going to create a sub account so that we can use the ID here. So let's create a sub account. What you'll do is go down to the sub account endpoints and then click on create a new sub account, which we've navigated to. And now you're going to enter your details. So basically the name, the email, the first name, last name. We'll use the example values given, and then we'll create our sub account. This is what we're going to use to get the transaction details. So as you can see, we have created our sub account and we're going to copy the ID. So ensure that you copy this ID securely into a place where you can retrieve it later. So I'll paste it here. Remember, we haven't performed any transaction on this specific sub account, so it shouldn't show us any transaction. So we input this here and we have our code ready. We confirm that it is the sandbox URL and the API key is inserted in the header, and we're good to go. So we click try it. And as you can see, the status is successful, but we don't have data yet. But if we perform a transaction, let's do a simple transaction. So let's add the sub account ID there, and then this is airtime. Let's do Chimoney. So let's add a sub account ID and then use the test values to pay out, and then click try it. Ensure the URL is a sandbox URL. So now we have a transaction, and these are the transaction details. So now we're going to go back to the get all transactions by account endpoint, and once again we're going to now enter the issue ID. So remember, the last time it showed that we don't have any transaction currently. So when we try this out, it should show that we have one transaction. Okay, so let's just go back. Okay, this is the issue ID of the transaction. Okay, sorry, this is the wrong endpoint I was testing. So let's have this instead. And as you can see, it has the transaction details of the transaction that we just made. So you can use this to for detailed reports, so to view all the transactions you've done in a specific period, to verify their statuses, and to also view other specific details such as the issuer. You can also get a list of the cherefs. There are a lot of use cases for this. And now we're going to move into the get single transaction detail. This is especially applied in the customer support operation scenario, where they're able to retrieve specific transaction details and verify their statuses and see other details and solve customer support issues. So for this, it requires a transaction ID, and we are going to perform another transaction and enter the ID here. So let's do another payout. We're not going to enter a transaction ID this time. This is airtime. Let's do payout Chimoney. And then we're going to use the test values again and then try it. So remember, if you have the developer account dashboard, another simpler way, so these details are, so this is a payout, but we can also go to the developer dashboard, the sandbox dashboard, and then you can see all the payouts that have been made. So if you want to get transaction ID, issue IDs, that you can all get them here. So we want the transaction ID for this one, and we're going to enter it here. Get single transaction detail. So we have the ID of that specific transaction. So any transaction that has been made on the sandbox on this page will reflect on your sandbox dashboard. So you can still retrieve the details there instead of, because once you move to another endpoint, some of the data might be erased, so you can still find them on the dashboard. So I've just included the ID, and now we can click try it. Remember, we are trying to get the details of this particular transaction. And as you can see, we have all the details, the issue ID, the value in USD, all the details of that specific transaction. And the next endpoint I want us to look at is the account transfer endpoint. So this is basically useful for peer-to-peer transfers, but it can also be used to transfer funds from one account to a sub-account. So if you have an account and have several sub-accounts, you can initiate payouts to other sub-accounts and another account which is not your account. So you have to include your receiver ID. This is required, but remember, this receiver ID, you can also have if you also use the sub account ID, it should also work. So remember the sub account ID we had copied, which is this one. We're going to use it here and test it out. So this is the receiver ID. So I'm sending money. The account in this case is this account we made here, this sandbox account that we made. But remember, we created a sub account via the API docs on the sandbox, and this was the API key, right? Now we want to initiate a transfer from this main account to the sub account we created in the API docs. So the next time we are going to come back here, this value should have reduced to 940. So let's do that. So we want to send $10 and then click try it. Awesome. So we've initiated an account transfer of $10 to our sub account. So when we go back here, this is 940, which means we have successfully sent Chimoney to our sub account. The last endpoint I want us to look at is to delete an unpaid transaction. So when a transaction has a value of unpaid, it basically means that it has been initiated. And by initiated, I mean that a payment request has been initiated and it has not been paid yet. This is practical in scenarios where someone is being paid for a gig or paying out gig workers. So we first need to initiate a payment request. So the payment request will have a status of unpaid. In order to initiate a payment request, we go to the initiate payment request endpoint, and we'll be required to have the payer email. So this is an email of the person who will be paying out to you, who has requested the payment, and they will receive an email with the payment link, and I'll show you later how the payment link looks like. So we'll enter the value in USD, which is 10, and then we'll use the text value for the email, and then confirm everything is okay, and then click try it. We have successfully initiated a payment request, as you can see, and you'll want to copy this data because we'll need some of the data included to perform other transactions as we test out the endpoints. So copy it in a safe place where you're able to retrieve it easily. And as you can see down here, this is the payment link that the person will receive, the person you're sending it to. So this is how it looks like. When the person who's supposed to pay clicks on that link, this is what they'll see. So they'll be able to pay out using card, crypto, or Chimoney. If they click pay now, after choosing an option, they'll be able to pay and you'll receive the money. Awesome. So we have the details. We'll now go back to the accounts endpoints, specifically back to the delete a transaction endpoint. But first of all, we have to verify that the payment has a status of unpaid. So we'll go to the verify payment endpoint and then enter the issue ID of the transaction we just made, the payment request we just initiated. So retrieve the issue ID. And just finding the issue ID. Awesome. So we copy that and then go back to the API docs and then paste it under that specific box, and then we click on try it. So this is supposed to show as an unpaid status, and as you can see, the transaction has a status of unpaid. So now we can go and delete the transaction. So under the account endpoints, we go to delete an unpaid transaction, and then we need the href. So we'll go back to the data we copied and retrieve the href, and there it is. And then we paste it back into the href box, and then click on try it after verifying the information is correct. Awesome. So as you can see, it shows successful and that the data is deleted. So we want to truly confirm that this has been deleted indeed. So we go back to the payments endpoint and click on verify payment, and then enter the ID. So the ID is in the data that we copied. So we'll just retrieve it and then use it to confirm that the transaction is indeed deleted. So go back to the API endpoints, enter the ID, and confirm the issue ID, and confirm that it has been deleted. So it should return a null value, an error value. So as you can see, it says that not found for that ID, which means it has been successfully deleted. And that concludes the second tutorial in the Chimoney Payment API series. If you need any further assistance, please reach out to us at support.chimoney.io. Stay tuned for the next article in this same series where we'll be exploring the AI endpoint of the Chimoney API. Bye.